Everyone's well and things are looking good and no problems. I guess that's a plus.
Daniel's grandma, she goes to the oncologist.
Okay.
She's got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
This is it.
And they're deciding on treatment.
Yeah, thank you. I'm hungry, I came right in. And you want one?
I know.
Really?
Yeah.
We're just taking names for saying prayer. If we have anybody that you want to mention.
Yeah, maybe she needs to be on the prayer list.
Who?
Frida, she's out in Las Vegas.
She comes back. Maybe you need to be.
Maybe I need to be on
there.
She's out there with too many distractions.
Yeah. I have no distractions. The grasshoppers are all dead.
Well, y'all gonna go easy on me this morning, I guess. If you don't have anyone else that you want to add to our list, let's begin with a prayer and we'll mention these. Holy Father in heaven, thank you for this morning, this day we have to come before you, for this class, for our brothers and sisters that we can share your word with. Father, ask a special blessing on these two that were mentioned this morning. Pray for the family of Cindy Clark, who's experienced a sudden loss of her life. Pray for Lana and Connie and comfort that family as they experience this loss. And Father, we don't know what happened, but just pray that there can be some peace here and comfort. Father, pray that you would be with Daniel Baxter's grandmother. She's seeking treatment for her lymphoma, that they can find a good way to help her combat that she can have good prognosis and return to good health. Father, I ask that you'd watch over all of us this morning. Help us to be mindful of what we're doing here and help us to be pleasing in your sight. Thank you for the many ways that you blessed us, and most of all for your Son. These things we're praying in His name. Well, thank you for being in class today. We are online, so if you're not aware, you can say hello or be aware that you're being recorded. This morning's topic is Christian joy, and if you don't know kind of how the lessons work out, sometimes we are approached by an elder and say, we have a series of lessons coming up, would you like to pick a topic, and you'll look at it through the list and see what strikes your interest, and joy was on there, and of course that seems like a pleasant thing to talk about. Sometimes you might have a topic like sin or guilt or the devil, or things that are kind of a little depressing, so hopefully you can have a positive, uplifting class this morning.
You want the store shut?
Sure. I thought about that a while ago, but I'll be honest, joy is sometimes a choice. Sometimes it's a natural tendency that people have. I love being around people who are naturally positive or an optimistic person. I have a lady that I work with at Marlowe Public School that she's kind of in our administration, and she is one of the most positive people. You just enjoy being around her. About Barry Parker. Some of you would know her. I hate to say a person's name, but just whether she makes a choice every day, but just makes you feel good to be around her, greeting and always smiling and positive. And so that's joy to me. A person that always exudes this energy, that they're excited about life and excited about people, and sometimes that's hard. And so I don't claim to be an expert on this. Hopefully some of the things that we bring up this morning will encourage you to find some new ways to add joy to your life or to work on this. The text this morning is Philippians, and it kind of skips all through the 4 chapters of Philippians, but we're going to look at a letter that Paul wrote, I guess, through Timothy to this church in Philippi, and he offers several things that bring him joy and as encouragement as he talks to the people there. Maybe it's kind of an icebreaker, a way to start this. I guess there was a church marquee one week that said, some people act as if they were baptized in lemon juice and weaned on a sour pickle. I don't know that I've ever heard that one. I've heard some really good sayings. It's interesting that we probably have the most hope and the most potential to be happy, joyful people, and sometimes we see other Christians that just are not happy and not pleasant. So we have to be careful how we're perceived and seen in the world. That's probably going to affect the confidence that we can exude to others, that we can that we have hope, that we have faith, and if we're a grumpy person, if we're always negative, pessimistic, that's not convincing that we're different. What reasons can you think of for not having joy in your life? There are some things. We just prayed for some very challenging issues that we encounter. We encounter sickness. We encounter death in our life. What steals our joy? Good morning. Walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. His goal is to devour us, to take away energy. Okay. If you don't have hope, it's hard to have joy. Those kind of go hand in hand. So when you lose hope, you think everything's going downhill. Anything else? Think about the life of the Apostle Paul. What reasons might he have had for not living with joy?
He had something wrong, a physical ailment.
Okay. Not sure. Some speculate maybe his vision, maybe almost blindness. See with what large letters I write, or he prayed for the affliction that would go away. But could have had a life of guilt. I mean, once he had the vision, had this instance of conversion, he could have very simply just grieved the rest of his life for the awful things he did to Christians and the persecution. I know that would be hard to overcome. And talked about hope. If he had not had hope of forgiveness and hope that God was okay with him, how could he make such a big change?
He did remember always what he did, and I think that's what made him even more purposeful in his life to help others, save others.
Okay. So maybe instead of guilt, it was kind of the driving force to like go the other direction. He was very convicted, whatever he was doing, whether he was doing it in persecution, but he thought it was right, or whether he was actually doing it, he was convicted. He was going to work hard at it. And I think maybe we're not really successful at helping others until we've been kind of through some low points in our life. And Paul was able to identify probably with a lot of people because he's human, he's had faults, he's had struggles, and same thing for us. When we experience a low time in our life, it's really awful when we go through it, but if we have the faith and we have the hope and we recover and get on the other side of that, then when we experience others that are struggling, we can kind of relate, we can offer some encouragement in how we dealt with it. So
You wonder in his life. He never mentions any family. Maybe, he was alienated from them after he became a Christian too.
well, he travels so much, and I don't know if, of course, he has extended family all over the world, but yeah, he looks like his focus is just on getting the message out as far as he can everywhere. He didn't, choose that life just to stay put and stay in one spot. But I think reasons for not having joy. He had mentioned the health impairment, mentioned that he could have regretted the persecution. He could have really regretted the fact that he was imprisoned and kind of didn't have a whole lot of hope for getting out. And so that's not the attitude we see him with, though. He looks that even though he's in chains, and even though he's in prison, he has a positive attitude. And so here's someone that we're going to talk about this morning that you would think would not be very joyful, that still finds joy. So another thing I thought about starting class with, of course, we can just jump right into the Bible, but I'm just curious, since we're a small group this morning, what is something that brings you just immediate joy? Anything, something in your life that is a moment where you didn't have to stop and think about it, just naturally you felt elated, you were happy, you just immediate joy.
When the wind's not blowing.
My grandchildren.
Okay.
My great-grandchildren.
Hopefully your family can bring you joy. I guess I thought about that, and I think Layla, of course, when she's born, there's that, probably for the birth of a child, there's just immediate joy and attachment and bonding that happens right there, and you just overcome. But there's times just seeing her walk in the door, coming after school every day, and she walks in the door just happy to see a child. It's just instant joy. And she doesn't have to do anything, it's just there. And there are moments where you just get instant joy like that. I think so. Other times, baptisms should be. I mean, it's kind of exciting. You're like, wow, think about what just happened. And it's a little exciting. Maybe a marriage ceremony. Hopefully, if you're in support of the marriage. What else is joyful? Be joyful at the death of somebody that's late. That's hard, but then there's hope there. Joyful. I'm talking. I was going to ask you. What brings you joy?
Even when a loved one has been real sick and they get better, that brings a lot of joy.
Now, buddy, I'm going to be quiet this morning. Here's something I thought of, photographs. You ever go look at an album, and probably most of us don't even make albums anymore because it's all right here on the phone, and that kind of scares me because someday I'll be looking back for pictures of Layla and things that we've done. And I'll go, it's all on this computer that's been in the cabinet for 20 years and the file's still good. But used to, people make albums, they'd love to sit and go back and look at the photos, and they'd bring you joy thinking about the good times and memories. Or even old family videos. I don't shoot footage, but growing up, I know my parents, we had family videos, and that's fun to sit and experience the joy of the good times that you had together. Holidays, do your holidays bring you joy, or do they just bring you misery and love, make you nervous wreck? I think they're really stressful for my wife, but for some people, holidays bring a lot of joy. Well, another thing that I think relationships can bring us a lot of joy, and I think they're built upon some things that we share together, shared experiences, commonalities. We have a unity in purpose, a little bit like a family. And I think as we read through Philippians this morning, it is that these bonds that Paul has with the people in Philippi, these relationships that are bringing him joy. And so if you will, let's look here in chapter 1. We're going to start reading through Philippians chapter 1 and his message of joy. Bear with me, I'm going to get back to chapter 1 here. Paul and Timothy, servants of Christ Jesus, to all God's holy people in Christ Jesus at Philippi, together with the overseers and deacons, grace and peace to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. I thank my God every time I remember you. In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. It is right for me to feel this way about all of you, since I have you in my heart, and whether I'm in chains or defending and confirming the gospel, all of you sharing God's grace with me. God can testify how I long for all of you with the affection of Christ Jesus. So, just right off the bat, one of the first things he says, in all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy. Are you joyful when you pray for others? If you don't pray very often, that's maybe something that maybe we're missing. Maybe you pray with regret, or you pray for forgiveness, but sometimes it's okay to just be happy and excited. I think that there's something about the mind that when you have positive experiences, you want to keep having more of them. When you have negative, you want to have less. So if we're not happy and hopeful and joyful in our praying, maybe let's try to include that so that we want to pray more. He is happy to remember others in his prayers. He's happy in the fact that they're sharing something in common, their purpose in sharing God's grace. I know it brings me joy when people say, I'm praying for you. And I think somebody, Reed Harris, and I don't know what connection you had with somebody here, but she's one that just for some reason has kind of come up to me, and partly because of my wife who's not here very often, and maybe you have somebody in your family that doesn't come much, but Reed has just kind of really taken me on in years past and just comforted with prayers. I'm going to be praying for you. I'm thinking about you. And that means a lot. That kind of brings me joy that others are kind of helping me in this. Joy that regardless of whatever state we're in, God's people are continuing his purpose toward his second coming. What are some things that we can pray for that might make us feel joyful and helpful or hopeful? He says that in all my prayers I pray with joy, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. So he knows that even though he's imprisoned, the good work is carrying on in these other people. He's happy about that. He's excited that regardless of the state, the situation that's going on, he's joyful and thinking about them. We can obviously be joyful and celebrate when others are celebrating. We have times that there's showers, or we have banquets, or like some have weddings, and we can try to be joyful. Some ways that you might help encourage others: writing cards, making phone calls. We just around Christmas time had baskets that kind of showed that we carried Christmas baskets for those that maybe needed something, or even Thanksgiving, I think, with hams. Just little simple acts that bring joy to the lives of others, regardless how we are feeling in our lives. Maybe you're really not very joyful, but the act of bringing joy to others can make you feel better. What are some things you could pray for to increase your joy? I've had time to make myself a little bit of a list here, but if we don't have joy, what do we need to be bringing into our life for joy?
Stay closer with God.
Okay, and that was the first thing I put was growth. Just, we need to be hopeful and joyful about growing and interested in it. And then next to that, put energy. I think a lot of us feel tired a lot of the time, but we need to have kind of not a sedentary lifestyle, but we need to be active, and we need to be trying to grow and have moving forward instead of declining. Pray for our relationships. If you don't have growing, healthy relationships with other Christians, if you kind of stay locked into a tight little group and you're not reaching out, maybe we need to pray that we can experience some joy. And that's kind of how relationships work. It takes time. If you don't initiate a conversation, you don't find out about another person and start building some of these commonalities, it's amazing what a small world we live in. You talk to somebody, and you might share a relative, or you might have lived somewhere that you went to the same college. That if you talk long enough, you will share something with someone, and then over time you build those relationships, and those are encouraging. So maybe pray about that. If you're kind of an outsider, an introvert, that's something to work on.
There's always somebody that needs help,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's just to talk or listen, just to listen.
Mm-hmm. Maybe pray for greater faith, that if we're not very joyful, pray to God that He help give us some things to focus on and dwell on that are positive instead of the negative, so our faith can grow. Okay, let's look down further in the passage, verses 9 through 11. You'll have to forgive me, my phone goes back to this lock mode. If I don't mess with it, I should have taken that off. 9 through 11. This is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God. So, I think that basically, he's saying, I pray that you're going to grow, which is what we just talked about, in your knowledge and depth of insight, so that, verse 10, you may be able to discern what is best and be pure and blameless for the day of Christ. So, I would just say, seeing Christians desire knowledge for the purpose of purifying themselves before Christ. That should make you joyful. And if you don't understand that, think about it this way. Are you frustrated with the world? Are you frustrated with current events or politics or controversies, all the brouhaha that's going on, the direction of our country, all of these things that get you down? You probably heard the quote, be the change. Okay? If you're not happy, be the change. So this is kind of interesting. It's joy for Paul to see others growing, and the depth of their knowledge increases so that their lives become more and more like Christ, that they're going to be more and more prepared for the day when we're judged. Of course, we know that all shall appear before the judgment seat. We'll all give an answer. We need to be ready for that. And he's joyful about people growing in their knowledge. And this may sound funny, but being excited about Bible class, sometimes that's kind of hard. Look, here's some people, we ought to be joyful that we have a group. There could be 2 or 3 of us that what's happening here is all of us have a desire to grow. We're here because we want to learn more, hopefully. Or if you're like me, sometimes I do it out of habit because I know it's good for me and I may not feel real good at first, but then usually I'm glad later on because my mind gets in the right gears and I realize why I'm here. And so sometimes it may not be. So maybe it's habit. Your parents said you're going to go and that's just what we do now. But if you stop and you think, we're all here with this purpose. We want to be closer to God. We want to grow. We want to do more. That's encouraging. Later on, when we have our worship service and Leonard brings the lesson, or if it's Jason or whoever, we're excited about the fact that we may have 200, 250 people here that are listening to the Word. And so everything that's going on in the world that's really depressing, here's hope. We've got a group of people that are trying to kind of be the change and be the difference, and we should be joyful about that. It's sometimes hard to see joy. You ever stop and you just catch yourself kind of looking around at people at church and the different things, and we've got some that are kind of lost in this world, and then we've got some that, we're singing, they're off doing who knows what. It's hard. You have to really get your mind into thinking about focusing on God. Because I think if you're like me, you get distracted just every few minutes and you're all thinking about something. And you have to think about things like, God's really here with us this morning, and it's almost hard to imagine, imagine him on a throne, or he's there and he's watching us, or, as I'm saying these words, I'm talking to him, and you have to kind of get yourself in a different mindset of what's going on here, because we get into a routine and we get casual and comfortable, but we should be excited about this moment where we're all striving to grow and to come together. And I guess I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but like our singing, sometimes I worry about our singing because we don't sound very joyful. Like you'd think that, and it may be the acoustics. When we built the new building, maybe that hurts us, but you just think there'd be this loud boom, this roar coming from this people super excited to be here. People walk in and just, whoa. And sometimes you just can't hardly hear the singing. So I don't know. We need to be excited about the fact that we as a people are the joy in this world, and be happy about that. Okay, another passage. Let's skip down here to verse 12. Now, I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. He sees this persecution where he's in prison as an opportunity to advance the gospel. Most of us would probably not immediately see the good in our bad circumstances, but it's a matter of our perspective. How do you see the situation? For Paul, he says, okay, here's another opportunity. We're going to go in before the palace guard and everybody that I see, and all the soldiers and the rulers, and I'm just not going to keep talking. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to start talking in a new place. And because of this, it says most brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel. So I would say his bravery encouraged the others. He's obviously being persecuted. He could have been crying and he could have been worried and been afraid, but because of his bravery and his commitment to preach the word, it encourages the others. I think it says, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I'm in chains for Christ. There was no mistake. They heard Paul's message about why he's there. He didn't miss an opportunity. So, be able to have joy regardless of the circumstances. That can be challenging.
Keyword without fear. Right there at the end. Keyword. You approached all that without fear.
The gospel's what got him into trouble. And so he could have been fearful that to continue talking is going to cause more harm, more imprisonment, or be beaten, which he had been beaten and stoned and lots of things. But I think he finally got to the point, he just said, in whatever state that I am, to be content, and later on he'll say, basically, for me to die is gain. I'm not there yet. I think about things like if somebody put a gun to your head, and this is awful to get this far, but there have been instances where, think about the shootings, the school shootings, and there was a young student that said, do you believe in God? And the kids would have to say yes or no, and then they'd shoot him. But what do you do in that moment? Or do you have fear? Do you have confidence? fear probably keeps most of us from sharing our joy. I think we're hesitant because we don't know how others are gonna respond if we start talking about religious or spiritual things. We may think they take it, that we are boastful, or that we're a prideful person, or maybe we're afraid that they're gonna disagree, or maybe, I don't know. I think fear prevents us from sharing a lot of time. Where we should be joyful, and it should make us happy to share the good news, we experience fear. And I don't, you got any thoughts? Probably a good place to stop talking for just a second. Why are we fearful? We're afraid of being judged by another person.
I think a lot of it has to do with, a lot of times people think they know something about someone that may not be true, and
Mm-hmm.
they.
Okay.
Just,
Kind of, we have the conversation in our head before it even happens. We kind of play things out and know how it's gonna go, and then, well, that's not gonna work, and we didn't give it a chance. You've already determined the outcome before you even had that conversation, but what else? Maybe we're not joyful. I mean, maybe an honest evaluation of ourselves, we're not sharing the message because we're not experiencing enough joy ourselves that it really does make us happy. We stop and we dwell on like, I'm really am thankful for the grace and forgiveness, because my life, I know personally, like, if I didn't have hope and I stop and think about like the atheist route, or, if this is it, if this is all there is to it, I could get really depressed. And I could also see myself being like a really terrible person. I mean, what reason would I have for morality if nothing is, for a higher purpose or higher calling? Why would I try to be good? I mean, I'd go out and do whatever I want to do and benefit me. And so you get down that rabbit hole. If we're not really thankful to have grace and forgiveness, and then we're probably not going to be interested in sharing that with other people. We've not really experienced its goodness. It's not making us joyful.
I don't know if there's joy has different levels like love in the Bible, to where you have to have an inner joy before you can actually see joy.
I think that's what I'm trying to say. We don't have our outward joy, and we're not sharing it with others because maybe we're not inwardly joyful. We're not finding some of these reasons to just be an optimist. I guess that's the word. And used to give a speech contest for Optimist International when I was growing up, and they had a really good prize that if you could win at the state level, you'd win $1,500 scholarship. And the first time I got through like the local and the district and the state, I got beat out at the state. I went back the second year and I won it. But I remember those Optimist contests. It was saying speeches about positive thinking, making choices, and like that was just their goal, was to see the good and see the positive. The mission of Optimist people was to be encouraging. And if we don't strive to do that, we're not going to exude the joy, and we're not going to be happy. There is a lot to get us really down. Don't get me wrong. You can very quickly go to some dark places thinking about all the bad, but that's really not our calling. Verse 11 in chapter 1. This is joy and like-mindedness. And I'm going to have to probably scoot down a little faster. We're not going to get very far. Chapter 2, if you want to move on to chapter 2, verses 14 through 16. Actually, let's see. I'm going to go back. Let's very quickly, I'm going to read verses 1 through 11. This is talking about like-mindedness. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. And then he goes on and talks about who Jesus did not consider himself equality with God something to be used to his advantage. He made himself nothing, took on the nature of a servant, found an appearance as a man. He humbled himself, became obedient to death on the cross. And this is talking about a mindset that we have to put others before ourselves, to be joyful in the fact that we're all serving each other and we're looking out for each other's best interests, and that can bring you joy. If you don't take time, like we say, to build relationships and to share with others, and maybe even risk a little bit of embarrassment or risk some humility, as in like share your struggles and talk to other people. you can't really reciprocate and you can't build that support system, you know, that can bring you joy and bring you encouragement. If we're not really looking to help and encourage other people, then we kind of become the people that just come in, hi, how are you, fine, you know, sit down, whatever. We say, oh, I'm good, things are great. We don't stop and really take time to, I guess, Steve Gregg likes to say that this is the hospital for sinners, not the museum for saints. You know, if we're not realizing that we're here to kind of help each other, then basically we're here to kind of show off and look, we did our nice goody thing. We came and we worshiped, and then we had no problems, and we go on. And I think like-mindedness could come through humility. The fact that we're all here because we need God, we need each other, we need encouragement, and that takes time to kind of build. Like I say, build those relationships. It takes trust. You know, there's probably not a lot of people that you want to share deep, dark things with, but you need to have somebody. And when we seek others out and we serve others, we help each other, I think we can experience some of that joy. If you skip down to verses 14 through 16, this is talking about grumbling. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky. Think about the parable where Jesus talks about that you're the light of the world. You know, you don't put the light under a bushel, or you don't cover it up. You put it so that, you know, all can see. And I think the grumbling pretty quickly lowers our standing among our peers. We're seen as kind of the pessimists. Nobody wants to be around us. We just always bring thoughts down. That's kind of tricky, because if you're like me, sometimes you look at complaining and think, well, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just venting. You know, I'm just trying to get it out of my set, and I'm not really upset. I just need to talk to somebody about it. And so I know that we don't mean harm, but you have to be careful with that, because I know for me that's a struggle. Sometimes I share stuff, or I talk about things I think, you know, that really wasn't helpful, and that's an area where that I struggle, because I don't mean it to come across as being bad, but that's not productive. That doesn't build up. And that's hard when you see situations that are really frustrating, to kind of maybe stop and see something from someone else's perspective, or to maybe try to rethink it in a different way, or maybe consider some causes, or what has led something to be what it is. And I think we're just hasty. We have very quick gut reactions and how we respond. So maybe patience kind of pairs well with joy. To be a peaceful person, it helps you have joy if you can kind of slow down and maybe kind of have faith that things will work out, you know, that
not every person is a joyful person.
Right.
I have a daughter that's not. It's really hard to try to get her to have a different mindset. If they have depression, you know, they don't really want to be around others. It's hard.
Mm-hmm. And I thought of that when we were talking earlier about family, like you have joy when you see family, but there are some family that there's a little bit of a barrier, or something that you can't quite share that joy with, because you're not.
Because I'm not that.
Yeah.
I'm not a down person, but she is. So it's just hard to get them to come out of their shell.
And in my case, you know, thinking about a family member, I know that there's probably some other things that are frustrating that they're dealing with, and I have to try to put myself in their shoes and try to not just immediately feel hard, but try to sympathize with the person, or have empathy, and be joyful when there are moments that you can kind of connect and share something positive. Anytime you've got something, you flag me down. Okay? There at the end of chapter 2, they talk about Epaphroditus, who's someone that Paul knows they were concerned about. It says, in verse 25, I think it's necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus, my brother, co-worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. For he longs for all of you and is distressed because you heard he was ill. Indeed, he was ill and almost died, but God had mercy on him, and not only him also, but on me, to spare me sorrow upon sorrow. Therefore I am all the more eager to send him, so that when you see him, you may be glad, and I may have less anxiety. So then, welcome him in the Lord with great joy, and honor people like him, because he almost died for the work of Christ. He risked his life to make up for the help you yourselves could not give me. So here we see Paul being joyful and seeing a loved one return. He's talking about returning to health. Maybe someone that really had a scary moment and made a comeback. And really encouraged for you. That was getting really scary, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but we're very thankful, that we had a good outcome. And we need to have joy and experience happiness for those that have these good results, and see joy in loved ones. We have, opportunities where people come back and visit. Maybe they've moved away and they come back to see, take time to stop and rekindle the old friendships, relationships, tell them that you enjoy seeing them. Encourage those who are ill, recovering. Epaphroditus, I don't know, it looks to me like maybe he brought a gift or something to Paul. I don't know if it was money. But looks like he almost died in trying to serve Paul. And so think about people out in the mission fields and people that are putting their life on the line. And way back right after college, I did 2 summers mission work in Ukraine, and I think about some of the kids that we studied with and like our Bible camps, and I wonder where are they at today? Are they out in the war? And I think about some of these people, and you think about those relationships that you had, and you want to see good things happen, and it's hard, like with the war and with uncertainty of what's going on, that they've just taken time to pray for some of these people and pray that God would intervene and help on their behalf, and then be joyful when things do turn out positive. There are long lists. I could just keep going, but obviously we're going to run out of time. It says the joy of news concerning a loved one, which is Epaphroditus, the joy of Christian hospitality in chapter 2:29, the joy of being in Christ, the joy of a person who has won a soul to Christ. That's one that probably would be really good to stop and talk about for a minute. Is there anyone that has a story about a convert that you've made and how that made you feel? So I think that would probably be one of the most joyful. We talked about baptism earlier, but to know that you've studied with someone and then they make a conversion, and this is kind of a new hope that you have in them, that would be one of the most exciting things. You actually feel like you really fulfilled your purpose. Like, this is what I was here to do, and here's a new believer, and that would bring you so much joy.
I think encouraging, which I like to do that to people that have fallen back, and I've seen results, and it makes me really happy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you, because when we first started coming to church, I feel like you and your husband really just kind of took us in and sat with us, and we kind of had a bond, and I had bonds with several of you, but I know you were a good encourager for us when we first started coming to the old building. So the joy of receiving a gift from those you love, many, many things that could bring us joy.
I want to real quick, I didn't bring my Bible, you get out, have them bring it, but I have notes in my Bible from a sermon years ago from Bob Gregg. That.
Is this Robert? Steve's
the
brother,
dad,
Robert?
his
Oh, the dad,
dad, his
okay.
dad. That I can remember, he said, joy is not happiness. Because we have times in our life that we won't be happy.
Mm-hmm.
But we are to be joyful even through those times when we aren't happy. We have that joy through our salvation is what brings us joy through those times.
That's probably kind of bring it back full circle to how we started, is that joy is kind of a choice. It's something that you have to purpose in your mind. You may not wake up with joy. You have to start trying to think about positive things and make a conscious decision that I'm going to try to find something good to say to the people I encounter today, or I'm going to try to stop and pray for someone. I don't know. You have to make some habits or some routine in your life for this to start growing and building. I don't think it may be natural. There are some happy people out there, and they just kind of naturally seem to be that way, but I think a lot of us struggle with that. And you have to make it a point to appear joyful. And This concludes, it says, let us practice rejoicing in the Lord during this series as we study these lessons. May each of us have joy in our lives as we are partners together with Christ and the saints of all ages.
It's funny, the things in life that make you the happiest is free. It's everything you think you need. Everything God gives you is free.
There's a little poem, and I don't know if you'll enjoy this or not, but I'm going to end with a little Humpty Dumpty story, and then we'll be dismissed. It says, Humpty Dumpty, the rest of the story. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. And now the rest of the story. Finally, someone said, why, of all things, why don't we call on the King of Kings? He made Humpty at the very start, and he can fix what's torn apart. So they scooped him up and took him to the king, who fixed that little old Humpty thing. He made him just as good as new, and he said, Humpty, I have something to say to you. Stay off that wall, get in the right place, be a good egg, I say, make haste. For when you are where you ought to be, it's hard to crack up, don't you see? I'm going to stay and make you well, then I want you all, your friends, to tell, that when you're broken with no song to sing, just call on me, the King of Kings. When we see the Humpty Dumptys, or life is falling apart, we know where we need to turn and try to have our joy and our encouragement. So, it's kind of joy could be a really deep topic. We've done a lot of things, and I appreciate your comments, because I
Stay off the wall.
Stay off the wall. Anything else? Any announcements or something you want to add? Okay, well, let's put on a smile and try to be joyful this morning. Thanks for being in class.
How are you? Well, that's all right. I'm doing much better. So I know sometimes I'm
There you go. Right up. We all dove up then. You don't want to fall on what your trash can. No, I'm like, you're all right. If I fall out of my face, just come to Hey, where you sitting, Jess?
I've never done that, so I really don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, what up,
You
gotta yell.
Yeah.